Hello beautiful humans, my name is RidersDX and welcome to my channel where today we've got a really interesting Sonic Movie 3 take over here. So this comes from Screen Rant. They're basically saying that like the footage that came out during CinemaCon confirms their worst fears about the sequel Shadow story. So that is a very insane headline to put out there. I mean, it definitely caught my attention. So we're gonna go to the article and take a look at what their like concern actually is and kind of see if it's legit or not. Basically just kind of give my own opinions on it. I do have my own reservations about the third movie, but we'll see if I actually go into that or not. I'm interested in seeing if we agree, basically. The movie is hot off the heels of recently just announcing Keanu Reeves as Shadow, which is like an insane choice. What a crazy universe we live in that Jim Carrey and Keanu Reeves are in the same movie for Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, what is this? So I did ask some of you all what are some of your opinions on that, and so I'll go ahead and cover some of those opinions at the end of this video. But let's dive into this article because my curiosity is piqued, to say the least, about what they're gonna say here. New footage of Sonic 3 has provided mild concerns about the film's narrative surrounding its new antagonist, Shadow. The 2020 Sonic movie was an excellent family adventure movie, bringing the speedy blue hedgehog to the big screen in a way that was faithful to the energy of the beloved game franchise. Sonic 2 took things up a notch, introducing supporting Sonic characters like Knuckles and Tails. In December 2024, Sonic 3 will be released with new characters and an exciting premise that will adapt a fan favorite storyline. CinemaCon 2024 saw announcements and new footage for several upcoming film projects, building anticipation for movies like Sonic 3. While the upcoming sequel still doesn't have a trailer for the public, there are Sonic 3 CinemaCon footage descriptions to infer about. Recent news about the Sonic movie franchise implies it will continue to increase the stakes, with producer Toby Asher suggesting the series will eventually reach Avengers level events. It's exciting for Sonic fans, but the third film will be pivotal for the franchise. In Sonic 2, Robotnik enlisted the help of Knuckles, hoping the Red Echidna would be powerful enough to defeat Sonic, though they instead became allies and defeated the villain. The film plays Sonic and Knuckles against each other for most of its run, allowing fans to see them go head to head for a while before they team up. This works for Knuckles, as his and Sonic's relationship is a fair bit more antagonistic than Sonic and Tails. Sonic 3 runs the risk of being repetitive of the second film with a nearly identical storyline. Okay, this is a very interesting thing to say because technically that's not false. Technically, the Sonic vs. Knuckles storyline is not that different from like the Sonic vs. Shadow storyline. Obviously, you and me, we're both huge Sonic fans. At least I'm assuming you're a huge Sonic fan if you're watching this. And you and me both know that those storylines have drastic differences that really make these characters super unique. But if the writers aren't diving into Shadow's story as deeply as they should, then I can totally see there being a bit of a repetitive nature to it. But I don't think that's very likely, to be honest, but let me keep going to the article before I kind of jump to conclusions. Let's see what they have to say to back this up. Footage of Sonic 3 at CinemaCon was fairly limited, indicating that a game-accurate Dr. Robotnik would be shown with a new plan to defeat Sonic. That plan involves Shadow, the mysterious hedgehog teased in the second movie's post-credits scene. Robotnik will likely use Shadow as another weapon to oppose Sonic, with the premise that Shadow is even more powerful than Knuckles. Knuckles and Shadow have some critical differences, but if the movie follows the narrative of Sonic Adventure 2, they could wind up following similar arcs. Okay, first off, I don't really like where that's headed, to be honest, because it's basically implying that if they follow the exact plot line of Sonic Adventure 2, which they're not going to, I'm just going to tell you that right now, it's not going to be the same exact plot line. But if they were following the exact same plot line, they say that alone would put this movie at risk of being too similar to the Sonic 2 movie, which is just BS, because we all know that at least one pivotal difference in that game versus the Sonic 2 movie was that Eggman eventually had to team up with Sonic and Co. to stop the Space Colony Arc from like devouring the Earth. Meanwhile, in Sonic 2, Eggman was the big baddie from start to finish. Like, he was the one taking all the powers of the Emeralds. He was the one that was the ultimate threat. He was the one that Sonic and Co. had to defeat at the end of the day. And so if they follow Sonic Adventure 2's storyline, then it's already going to be different from the Sonic 2 movie because the stakes are much higher than it would appear in Sonic 2, to the point where Eggman actually has to team up with Sonic. And if you actually paid attention to some of the details that came out of CinemaCon viewing, there actually is a bit of a tease at the end of the teaser that they showed off that infers Sonic and Eggman need to work together at the end of the movie. So we're already seeing some snippets of the storyline following the footsteps of the Sonic Adventure 2 storyline like pretty closely. So I already see some differences happening here, and I think the movie's already gonna be fine in terms of like not following in the footsteps of the Sonic 2 movie. But let's keep going. Sonic games drawings aren't known for being particularly nuanced, but one one of the reasons Shadow is such a fan favorite is that his arc is rather emotional. The Sonic movies have been rightfully silly and lighthearted so far, but being repetitive with formula and tone will hurt the franchise in the long run, especially if it's attempted to expand with grander threats. A shift in tone toward a more emotional narrative could benefit Shadow and the overarching narrative for the Sonic series. Sonic movies shouldn't be too serious, but some variation will help its longevity. This is actually a really good point. So I would say that like both Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, the movies, have definitely been a lot more lighthearted than I personally would like prefer. Like that's just my general taste. I think with Sonic, having a nice mix of both lighthearted and serious moments is key to really establish like the bread and butter of the franchise's narrative. And I do feel like the movies so far have kind of tended towards a more goofy side, which, you know, it's a hit. So what am I gonna say? Obviously most people love it, and that's why the movies are so successful, and that's why Sonic is having this sort of renaissance in the first place. But me personally, I would love like a slightly more serious narrative, and that's why I'm really looking forward to Shadow being in this movie, because hopefully Shadow will encourage them to have a bit of a more serious and like grounded narrative compared to the first two movies. I already saw a little bit of that with the Sonic 2 movie. I felt like this franchise was going towards that direction with the last movie, so only way to go is up from here. So I'm really hoping that that's the case. Having a more emotional narrative can definitely be great for this movie. Sonic 2 is one of the best Sonic movies and shows, and imitating its narrative could be good in theory, but the implication of expanded franchise gives Sonic 3 a higher bar. A Knuckles spin-off TV series starts on April 26, pushing the franchise forward even further. The material going forward has to focus on keeping the franchise fresh and engaging, especially if it will be building toward a more significant narrative. This is true. Like when I was looking at this article, I actually kind of thought about like what other franchises actually ran into this issue, and I could think of two right off the top of my head. The SpongeBob movie series, for instance. And so if you watch Sponge on the Run, that's basically a diet version of the original movie's plotline. You know, it has a very similar like storyline and plotline that really shows like SpongeBob coming into his own and becoming like a bigger person than he was ever meant to be. And that was basically the first movie, like in a nutshell. But the third movie did it worse. So, you know, that is definitely a risk. If they start running out of ideas, then they could be at risk of like repeating themselves again. But I hope with the introduction of Shadow, that means again we'll get a more narrative and emotional narrative coming into the foray over here, and this movie can definitely stand on its own 2 feet from the other two movies. Another example I thought about was actually the Shrek film franchise. And so I remember when Shrek the Third came out, and it was definitely very lukewarm received, and I haven't seen the fourth movie personally, but I have heard that it has a lot of similarities to the first movie. And so that's another example of kind of going back to what worked and trying to give more of that. But you know, you're not going to have a successful movie if you try to repeat ideas and such. Although I really don't have a strong inkling that they're going to repeat ideas here. If Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 showed us anything, is that these writers aren't afraid of like expanding the franchise to more serious territory. So I do think we can safely expect the writers to push the ante a little bit more, especially with an iconic character like Shadow the Hedgehog joining the four-way. Sonic 3 can differentiate itself from its predecessor through its ending. Using a similar plot structure is a fantastic way to make audiences feel comfortable before subverting their expectations with something shocking, and Shadow's storyline is perfect for that. If the film builds Shadow as a complex character like Knuckles, who demonstrates that he has some good in him, audiences will expect him to grow into a hero, opening the potential for a surprise ending. In Sonic Adventure 2, okay, why did they misspell Sonic Adventure 2 twice? It's not Sonic Adventures, it's Sonic Adventure 2. My god, I can't. Shadow turns good and helps Sonic save the world, though it comes at his heartbreaking sacrifice. So you know the ending of Sonic Adventure 2, but you can't spell the game name right. Make it make sense. The other option would be for Shadow to stay bad, leaving his transformation for future films, similar to how Loki was portrayed in the MCU. This would also leave him to be used in future films rather than killing off one of the franchise's most compelling characters. The other significant factor for variation is Maria Robotnik, the human girl who's kind to Shadow and remains in his thoughts after her tragic death. It's one of the franchise's most emotionally driven narratives and could be the perfect element to make Sonic 3 a fantastic movie. Okay, so this article, I do feel like it's a concern that I don't necessarily share, because I do think that the writers have proven to me at least that they're competent enough in terms of Sonic lore that they won't outright like make the same movie as Sonic 2. Although it is a reasonable fear to have given like how other franchises have gone down. One of them being a Paramount example that I listed actually. So as long as they stick to their guns and keep pulling from the Sonic lore, I do think that this movie will be totally fine in terms of like being its own movie outside Sonic 2. In fact, I think it has every reason to be the best movie of the three. You know, me personally, I thought the first movie was kind of just okay. You know, I wasn't really like that crazy about it. The second movie was an improvement over the first one in many ways, so I was happy to see that. And I do think the third third movie has everything it needs to be an even better piece of media from the first two movies. And so one can only hope that when they introduce Shadow into this franchise, they don't try to like dumb him down and make him like as goofy as the other characters, because that's not respecting like Shadow's character overall and definitely would just not feel genuine. But if they make Shadow like really bring in that emotional narrative into the franchise, I have really good feelings about what this movie is going to bring. That's not to say Shadow can't be goofy. Like, I heard that he's riding on his motorbike at one point in the teaser, so he definitely can have his goofy moments, you know? He's not absolutely like isolated from that. In fact, the original Adventure 2 did have some goofy moments when it came to Shadow, so it would still fit his character if he had some goofy moments. But I do hope that they up the ante of this movie and that Sonic 3 is an emotional roller coaster. I'm ready for it. I need it to be an emotional roller coaster. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about that article in the comment section below, but in the meantime, let's go over some of your opinions on Sonic 3 and Shadow's voice actor so far. So Shining Dude from Twitter said, I just think it's funny that in the first movie, Sonic called Keanu a national treasure, meaning there's exactly two beings in that universe that sound exactly like Keanu Reeves, Shadow and Keanu. That is hilarious. That's great. I totally missed out on that reference in the first movie, so it's really great to see it come full circle and Keanu is actually a part of the Sonic movie franchise. I read somewhere that Keanu actually declined an invitation to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and so the fact that he declined that but said yes to Shadow the Hedgehog says it all. Says it all. VA says, Keanu is Neo, John Wick, and now he's going to be Shadow. I have the feeling that it'll be an amazing portrayal of the character, using some guns, a cool motorbike, and impactful powers. Not to mention that Keanu has already done Batman on the movie DC Super Pets, which had a deep and excellent voice. Now, I can't say that I'm familiar with Keanu Reeves' work, to be honest. There's not a lot of media that I've watched that he's in, which I think might be a crime against human society, but that is what it is. But I have heard that he does have a nice, good, edgy, dark, deep voice, and well, that is Shadow's motto right there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he interprets Shadow, but he does seem like a perfect choice for Shadow, honestly. I feel like his name went around multiple times when people were speculating who was going to voice Shadow, so obviously they were keeping an ear out and heard that. The Good Witch Lose says, I think it's cool that Keanu as Shadow might be the perfect casting pick. Again, like I said, he really does seem like the perfect choice for this, and I'm really curious to see that first trailer, because I think that first trailer will reveal what he sounds like. So I'm very curious to see and hear what that's going to be once it finally comes out. Edward Robinson says, it looks and sounds good. A hover motorcycle like Yu-Gi-Oh! Shadow fighting Tails, Sonic, and Knuckles sounds awesome. I know on 5DS the motorcycle are called dual runners. I don't know what they're talking about. Yu-Gi-Oh! DS, I don't know what that is. But what I will say is that I do like the fact that they brought in the motorbike for Shadow, because again, I feel like something that the Sonic franchise wasn't always good at was kind of like looking back on its entire history, not just its good parts but also its bad parts. So I feel like ever since Generations, they've been good at like acknowledging the parts that weren't as received well critically, and to see Shadow the Hedgehog the game get some nods here and there like this is pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing what other things are going to be in there. I kind of doubt guns are going to be in this movie, to be honest, because they do want to keep it like family friendly, so I kind of doubt that's going to be in there, but the motorbike, no problem. Brab says, I was hoping Robert Pattinson, but I understand. That's an interesting choice for Shadow. I did hear that Robert did really good as Batman in the Batman movie. I need to watch that one day, but I've heard some really good things about his portrayal over there, so maybe he would have been a good choice. Obviously he isn't, but he probably would have done a good job as Shadow. Man, actually, Shadow and Batman are very connected characters if you think about it. Any Batman voice actor would have done just fine as Shadow, now that I think about it. Like, thinking through all the Batman voice actors I'm familiar with, they all would have done fine as Shadow, so that's funny. The Anchor Arms chat, should have been Kirk Dorton or Jason Ritter. And so, man, I would have died. I would have died if he came back to voice Shadow for the movie. I would have absolutely died. But knowing that this is Hollywood and they want big names to attract people to watch the movie, there was no way he was going to voice Shadow. I do think that they let like Colleen voice Tails, because I guess Tails in their eyes wasn't as major of a like attractive character that were gonna bring new people in to watch this movie as Shadow the Hedgehog or Knuckles was, for instance. They gave those characters like high profile choices because they thought that those characters would like attract like other audiences audiences beyond the Sonic fans. So I feel like each movie has sort of had like that big name Hollywood actor to kind of get people interested in it. The first movie was Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was the one that got people really interested. Second one was Idris for Knuckles. He was obviously a big name that was going to voice Knuckles. And the third one, Keanu Reeves. Like, that's a really big name to have coming in. So every movie has had at least one big Hollywood A-lister come in, introduced to attract people to come watch the movie. So it does not surprise me that Keanu Reeves is voicing the character. I'm happy for it. I'm interested in seeing what he's gonna do, but I would have died. I would have died if Kirk voiced Shadow. Bring him back at least for something. Maybe bring him back in Shadow Generations. Like, that'd be amazing. That'd be absolutely amazing. And Speeder Light just kind of sums it up by saying, let's go. Yep, awesome casting. I'm really interested in seeing what he's gonna do. And just, yeah, that trailer can't come soon enough is all I'm gonna say. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you all think about the article from earlier in the video? Do you agree with that concern, or do you think there's absolutely no reason to be concerned about that? Let me know why not. And let me know what you think about Shadow's voice actor. I mean, that's pretty big news. I don't think Paramount has officially commented on it yet, at least at the recording of this video, but they obviously will soon, and hopefully a trailer comes shortly afterwards. But all right, y'all, this is Riders, riding out. I don't know what I'm doing.